Good evening, and welcome to the last episode of the series. And to kick things off, let's start with a question from Mr. Wooler on the internet, who I'm told left a comment on one of my videos, and he asks if I have any more record attempts in the pipeline. Now, I assume you're referring to my rather short-lived Guinness World Record for sitting in a bath of beans, which I mentioned in episode 2. Well, John, believe it or not, yours is something of a controversial question, mainly because the Guinness organisation still refused to acknowledge my successfully breaking the records for both the most pairs of underpants put on in 1 minute and for running the fastest marathon dressed as a Viking. You know, given the incredibly rude replies that I've received from Guinness themselves, I think, well, let's just say it's not been the same since Norris and Ross passed away. Suffice to say, I've lost all faith in the Guinness organisation and their record keeping. Now then, looking through my postbag this week, and it appears that there are even more questions about my acting credits than I'd previously thought. So, apologies, as I really should have put them all together in one episode. Anyway, on with the show. And it seems that a few of you want to know about my many appearances in British soap operas. Well, the truth is, I've pretty much appeared in all of them, from Coronation Street to EastEnders, Crossroads to Emmerdale. I've played the villain in Brookside, Triangle and The Bill. I had a terrible accident in both Holby City and in Casualty. Not only that, but I've kicked the bucket, as it were, as an extra in more projects than I care to recall. But I suppose my biggest list of credits is probably as a voice actor. In fact, it was on my second trip to the Americas that the work really flooded in, and for some reason I built quite the name for myself within the field of animation. Again, I couldn't possibly name them all, but a few that do come to mind are things like Thundercats, Transformers, The Simpsons, and even a DC animated movie called The Book of Batman, where I played a rather cruel character known simply as the Bookworm. And let's not forget all of those missed opportunities along the way, programs that didn't quite happen due to one thing or another, such as The Man from Gallifrey, Quatermass and the Threat from Mars, Return of the Avengers, and The New Adventures of Catweasel. In fact, there have been quite a few disappointments over the years, but none more so than when ITV commissioned me to write an animated children's show based on a series of books that I'd written called The Strange Tales of North Compass. Now, the animated show centred around the adventures of Mr. Gilly and Mr. Fudge, a pair of mischievous bitsy folk. In fact, why not have a butcher's hook at this short clip? This is Mr. Gilly and Mr. Fudge. They're what you might call pixies. But up here in North Compass, we refer to them as the Bitsy folk. Well, it looks like another marvellous day in North Compass. Not too hot and not too cold. Look, there's Badgerton. Let's pop over and see what Mr. Gilly and Mr. Fudge are up to today, shall we? Oh dear, it looks like Mr. Fudge is in another one of his foul moods. I wonder why. Aha, can you see? It's his favourite cup, the bright red one he was given for his last birthday, and it appears to be broken. Now then, I wonder if he's had his morning cup of mushroom juice, because we all know how grumpy Mr. Fudge gets when he hasn't had his mushroom juice, don't we? Good heavens, who can that be? Oh look, it's Mr. Gilly from next door. I wonder if he knows that Mr. Fudge is suffering from mushroom juice withdrawal. Can you believe we'd recorded the entire 12 episodes of the first series, only for ITV to cancel us before they had even broadcast a single programme, with absolutely no explanation whatsoever? And I can only assume that the original tapes are now rotting in a storage facility somewhere. However, legally I can't do a thing about it, because those talentless clowns at Independent Television still own the rights to the project. Anyway, that's enough of all that. After all, as I've said many times, I am a man who has worn many hats. So, for the next question, I'd like to go over to Mr. Justin Casey from Croydon, who asks if I remember him from our meeting in a Mexican bus station many years ago. And he sent this photograph. Well, the truth is, I remember that trip as though it were yesterday. You see, I was on an expedition to Chichen Itza, and if memory serves, you yourself had just come from there, full of stories of its grandeur and magnificence. Come to think of it, as I recall, the altitude didn't exactly agree with your asthma. Rather interestingly though, just after our encounter, I spent the best part of a year travelling through Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and right down to Uruguay. And despite a few incidents at some of the borders and whatnot, I had a whale of a time. None more so than whilst working with Carlo and the rest of the chaps on a farm near the Canelones. Anyway, that's it for this evening, I'm afraid, and in fact, the series itself. But before I go, I have one last question from none other than the current Lord Sudbury himself, who asks if there is any way that I could use my influence to stop the protesters from camping outside Sudbury Manor. To which my answer is no, I don't think I shall. And with that, it just remains for me to say, with the exception of those inside Sudbury Manor, may the blessings of Mother Compass be upon you all.